What happens when an entire galactic alliance discovers that their greatest enemy was never their true threat? What occurs when beings who have conquered 1,000 worlds realize they've been fighting the galaxy's most dangerous species, while that species was still asleep? The Zephyrian collective thought they understood warfare. They believed their advanced technology, their hive mind tactics, and their ruthless efficiency made them unstoppable. For 3 centuries, they had swept across star systems, enslaving entire civilizations, turning proud species into nothing more than resources for their ever-expanding empire. But they made one critical error. In their arrogance, they assumed that a small, blue planet in an unremarkable solar system would fall like all the others. They thought the primitive bipeds calling themselves humans would surrender after the first demonstration of superior firepower. They were wrong. What they awakened wasn't just another species to conquer. They had disturbed something that had been dormant, something that evolution had spent millions of years perfecting in the crucible of survival, warfare, and an unbreakable will to protect what they loved. They awakened a human superwarrior. And, in the span of moments, everything they thought they knew about power, about dominance, about the very nature of warfare itself, would be shattered forever. This is the story of how an empire that had never known defeat learned the true meaning of fear. The massive Zephyrian mothership Dominion's edge hung in Earth's orbit like a metallic moon, its kilometer-long hull bristling with weapons that could glass entire continents. Admiral Kethvox stood on the command bridge, his 6 arms manipulating holographic displays with practiced precision while his compound eyes surveyed the blue-green world below. In 300 cycles of conquest, he had never encountered resistance that lasted more than a few rotations. Initial bombardment complete, Admiral, reported Sub-Commander Zilth from her tactical station. Primary military installations eliminated. Urban centers demonstrate expected panic responses. Kethvox's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. The humans had followed the standard pattern perfectly. First came denial, then, desperate attempts at communication, followed by futile military resistance, and, finally, the inevitable surrender. The species seemed particularly emotional, which typically made them easier to subjugate once their spirit broke. Deploy collection squadrons, he ordered. Begin harvesting the strongest specimens for the work battalions. The rest can serve as biomass for the conversion plants. But, as the first wave of Zephyrian dropships descended through Earth's atmosphere, something unexpected happened. The surrender signals never came. Instead, every major government simultaneously broadcast the same message across all frequencies, a message that would later be remembered as the moment everything changed. Citizens of Earth, the voice belonged to a middle-aged woman speaking from what appeared to be a concrete bunker. This is Secretary General Chanwei of the United Nations Emergency Council. 37 minutes ago, our planet was attacked by hostile extraterrestrial forces. Initial casualties are estimated at 12 million. Our conventional forces have been overwhelmed. Kethvox's translator worked perfectly, but something in the human female's tone made his secondary hearts flutter with unease. There was no desperation, no pleading for mercy. Instead, there was something cold and determined that he had never encountered in 3 centuries of conquest. Therefore, Chen continued, under Emergency Protocol 77 Alpha, established during the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962 and amended during the Singularity Accords of 2045, I am authorizing the activation of Project Prometheus. The transmission cut to images that made even Kethvox's experienced eyes widen. Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, massive mechanical systems were awakening. Cryogenic chambers the size of buildings began their warming cycles. Hundreds of automated systems that had been dormant for decades suddenly blazed with activity. What is Project Prometheus? Zilth asked, her own confidence wavering. On screen, the Secretary General continued her address. In 2031, Dr. Sarah Martinez made a breakthrough in human genetic enhancement that exceeded all expectations. Rather than create an enhanced soldier, her work had produced something unprecedented. A human being with capabilities so far beyond baseline that testing had to be suspended for safety concerns. The camera panned across a chamber where frost was melting away from a transparent wall. Inside, barely visible through the condensation, was the outline of a human figure. The subject volunteered for indefinite cryogenic suspension after demonstrating abilities that included superhuman strength, speed, reflexes, and, most importantly, an enhanced capacity for tactical analysis that bordered on precognition. The project was classified at the highest levels and, the subject placed in stasis until humanity faced an existential threat. Kethvox felt something he had not experienced since his first battle as a young officer. His combat sensors were detecting elevated stress hormones in his own system. Analysis of human military capabilities showed no mention of enhanced individuals. That threat has now arrived, Chen's voice echoed across the planet and beyond to every ship in the Zephyrian fleet. Project Prometheus is now active. God help us all. The cryogenic chamber completed its cycle. Warning lights bathed the underground facility in red as automated systems performed their final checks. Temperature gauges showed normal human ranges. Brain activity monitors displayed patterns that the facility's computers tagged as unprecedented but stable. Most concerning of all, the power consumption readings indicated that whatever was in that chamber was already fully conscious and aware. The transparent wall retracted with a soft hiss of equalizing pressure. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a hand emerged from the vapor, a perfectly normal human hand that pressed against the chamber's edge with casual strength that cracked the reinforced metal like paper. Marcus Chen stepped out of his prison of ice and time with movements that seemed almost casual until analyzed frame by frame. Each step covered exactly the right distance. Each turn of his head tracked targets and threats with mechanical precision. When he looked up at the monitoring cameras, his eyes held an intelligence that seemed to process information faster than the computers recording him. Status report, he said simply, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to command. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the project's current director and Dr. Martinez's successor, stepped forward with obvious nervousness. Major Chen, you've been in stasis for 17 years. Earth is under attack by an alien invasion force. Casualties are mounting rapidly. Conventional forces have been overwhelmed. Marcus processed this information without visible emotion, but his eyes began moving in patterns that suggested rapid calculation. Enemy capabilities? Energy weapons, superior technology, faster than light travel. Their main ship is orbital. Estimated crew of 50,000. Advanced shielding technology that makes our weapons largely ineffective. Time frame for planetary conquest at current engagement rates? Computer models suggest complete human resistance will collapse within 72 hours. Marcus walked to a nearby terminal and placed his hand on the scanner. The system immediately recognized his biometrics and granted him access to global military networks. For 30 seconds, he absorbed data streams that would take a team of analysts hours to process. His eyes moved back and forth with inhuman speed as he digested intelligence reports, satellite imagery, enemy movement patterns, and tactical assessments from every major military power on Earth. Acceptable, he said finally. Arm me. The weapons vault that opened for Marcus contained equipment that had been designed specifically for his enhanced capabilities. Body armor that would stop tank rounds but weighed no more than fabric. Weapons systems that could punch through starship hulls. Most importantly, a neural interface that would allow him to coordinate with Earth's entire defense grid as a single integrated system. As he equipped himself with practiced efficiency, Dr. Vasquez couldn't help but ask the question that had haunted the project for 2 decades. Major, are you still human? Marcus paused in his preparations and looked at her with eyes that held depths she couldn't fathom. I'm something humanity needed me to become. Whether that makes me still human or something else entirely, we'll find out together. Above them, Kethvox was receiving reports from his ground forces that made no sense. Entire dropship squadrons were going dark. Zephyrian warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds were sending panicked transmissions about a single human figure moving through their ranks like death itself. One human cannot defeat a battle group, Kethvox declared, but his voice lacked conviction. Sir, Ziltha's voice was tight with controlled fear. Ground command reports that the human is not using any detectable technology. No energy weapons, no power armor signatures. Just movement and precision that our targeting systems cannot track. On the main display, scattered camera feeds from the battlefield showed glimpses of something that defied understanding. A figure in dark armor moving between Zephyrian positions with impossible speed. Where he passed, alien warriors simply stopped functioning. Not killed with weapons, but neutralized with a precision that suggested intimate knowledge of Zephyrian anatomy and technology. How is one being eliminating trained soldiers? Kethvox demanded. The answer came from an unexpected source. One of the Zephyrian warriors on the ground managed to maintain his communication link long enough to provide a final report. Admiral, the human is not fighting us. He is simply ending us. No wasted motion, no unnecessary force. Each action removes exactly the right components to stop our equipment and exactly the right pressure points to disable us. It is as if he can see our weaknesses before we know we have them. The transmission cut to static. Marcus stood in the center of what had been a Zephyrian forward base, surrounded by disabled enemies and destroyed equipment. He had not fired a single shot. Every alien warrior lay unconscious but alive, their weapons and equipment neutralized with surgical precision. He looked up at the sky where the alien mothership hung like a promise of destruction. Phase 1 complete, he said into his communicator. Moving to Phase 2. In orbit, Admiral Kefbox stared at his tactical displays with growing horror. In 17 minutes, one human had eliminated an entire ground assault force designed to subdue a planet. The being's capabilities were beyond any biological entity in his experience, and yet his sensors confirmed it was still somehow fundamentally human. Admiral, Zilpha's voice was barely controlled panic. Long-range sensors indicate the human is approaching the spaceport. Intelligence suggests he intends to acquire atmospheric flight capability. Kefbox's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme stress in his species. In 3 centuries of conquest, he had learned to recognize the moment when resistance became dangerous. But this was something entirely different. This was the moment when the predator realized it had become prey. Prepare all orbital weapons, he ordered. If this human reaches space, we target him with everything we have. But, even as he gave the order, a part of Kefbox's tactical mind was calculating odds that terrified him. The human had displayed capabilities that suggested he could predict and counter strategies before they were fully implemented. If he reached the orbital theater with those same abilities, the outcome was mathematically uncertain. For the first time in 300 years of conquest, Admiral Kefbox was not certain his forces would survive the encounter. Below, Marcus Chen was already calculating trajectories to orbit, his enhanced mind processing variables that would determine not just the fate of Earth, but the future of an entire galactic region that had known only Zephyrian dominance. The war was about to move to a theater where humanity had never fought before, and the outcome would determine whether the galaxy continued to belong to the Zephyrian collective, or whether they had just learned why human beings should never be underestimated. The real battle was about to begin. Marcus stood at the edge of Cape Canaveral's emergency launch facility, watching automated systems prepare humanity's most advanced spacecraft for immediate deployment. The Starfire prototype had been designed for rapid orbital insertion, but its creators never imagined it would carry a single passenger on a mission to engage an entire alien fleet. Dr. James Park, the facility's director, approached with obvious reluctance. Major Chen, I have to stress that the Starfire was never tested for combat operations. Its weapons systems are theoretical at best, and you'll be facing technology that's centuries ahead of ours. Marcus continued his examination of the spacecraft's specifications, absorbing technical data with the same inhuman speed he had displayed during his briefing. The weapons are irrelevant. I need transportation and communication capability. The rest I'll handle personally. Sir, with respect, you're talking about engaging 50,000 alien warriors in their own element. In space. Even with your enhancements, the physics alone, Dr. Park, Marcus interrupted gently, his eyes never leaving the data streams. Are you familiar with the concept of emergent properties? The scientist blinked in confusion. Vaguely. When simple components combine to create capabilities greater than the sum of their parts. Exactly. Human genetic enhancement reached a threshold where individual improvements began compounding in unexpected ways. Faster reflexes, enhanced pattern recognition. Enhanced pattern recognition improved tactical prediction. Improved tactical prediction created something approaching precognition. The military called it the Prometheus effect. Marcus turned to face Park directly, and the scientist felt the unsettling sensation of being analyzed by an intelligence that processed information faster than his conscious mind could follow. I don't just see what my enemies are doing, Doctor. I see what they're going to do, often before they've decided to do it themselves. In space, that advantage becomes exponentially more powerful. Across the facility, technicians were completing pre-flight checks with desperate efficiency. Every few minutes, updates arrived from around the globe where Zephyrian forces continued their systematic subjugation. Cities that had resisted were being systematically reduced to ash. The alien invaders had resumed their advance after the mysterious disappearance of their advance forces, though their progress had become noticeably more cautious. Major, Dr. Park tried again. Even if your tactical abilities are as enhanced as you describe, you're still going up against energy weapons that can level mountains. Their shielding technology makes their ships virtually indestructible by our standards. Marcus smiled for the first time since awakening, an expression that somehow made him seem more unsettling rather than less. Doctor, have you ever studied the history of asymmetric warfare? Before Park could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. On the main displays, satellite feeds showed Zephyrian dropships approaching the spaceport. The alien fleet had apparently decided that whatever had eliminated their ground forces was too dangerous to allow access to space-capable vehicles. Estimated arrival time? Marcus asked with no apparent concern. 14 minutes, reported a technician whose voice cracked with stress. Sir, the Starfire won't be ready for launch for at least 20 minutes. Marcus walked calmly to the spacecraft and began his own inspection of its systems. His hands moved across control surfaces and diagnostic panels with the fluidity of someone who understood technology at an intuitive level that transcended training or experience. Where he touched, systems came online faster than their design specifications allowed. Launch in 8 minutes, he announced. Dr. Park stared in disbelief. Major, those systems require sequential initialization protocols that take. I'm not following protocols, Doctor. I'm optimizing them in real time. Marcus's fingers danced across multiple control interfaces simultaneously, each hand performing separate complex tasks while his eyes tracked dozens of data streams. The Prometheus enhancements didn't just affect my physical capabilities. They integrated my consciousness with technology in ways that the original researchers never anticipated. Throughout the facility, the Starfire systems awakened with unprecedented speed. Engine diagnostics that should have taken minutes completed in seconds. Navigation computers synchronized with global tracking networks and began calculating optimal orbital insertion trajectories. Most remarkably, the spacecraft's experimental weapons systems began displaying ready status indicators despite never having completed their testing phases. How is this possible? Park whispered. Evolution, Doctor. But not natural evolution. Directed evolution that took human potential and amplified it beyond what biology alone could achieve. I don't just use technology. I integrate with it. Outside, the approaching Zephyrian forces had reached visual range. Their dropships moved in perfect formation, energy weapons already charging for ground assault protocols. According to their tactical databases, humans required overwhelming force demonstrations to ensure compliance. The fact that one of their battle groups had gone silent was irrelevant. No single biological entity could threaten properly equipped Zephyrian warriors. Subcommander Zilf led the assault formation personally, her confidence restored by the familiar environment of overwhelming technological superiority. Intelligence reports indicated that the humans were attempting to launch some form of primitive spacecraft, probably an evacuation effort by their leadership. Standard procedure required destroying any attempt at escape before it could inspire resistance among the population. Target the launch facility, she ordered her squadron. Complete destruction authorized. No witnesses. Her weapons officer confirmed target acquisition as their energy cannons powered up to full charge. At this range, their first salvo would not only destroy the human spacecraft but vitrify the entire complex and everyone in it. The attack never connected. Marcus had launched the Starfire 3 minutes ahead of his own estimate, the spacecraft rising from Cape Canaveral with acceleration that exceeded its theoretical capabilities. But, more importantly, he had launched it on a trajectory that intercepted the incoming Zephyrian formation at precisely the moment their weapons reached full charge. From Zilpha's perspective, the primitive human craft had somehow appeared in the exact position where their targeting systems predicted it was least likely to be. Before she could adjust her attack vectors, the Starfire was among her formation like a dart between boulders. Marcus didn't fire a single weapon. Instead, he used the Starfire's enhanced maneuvering thrusters to execute a series of movements that defied everything the Zephyrians understood about aerospace combat. Where human spacecraft should have required long sweeping turns to change direction, the Starfire moved in sharp, angular patterns that seemed to ignore inertia. Each movement placed alien spacecraft in positions where they interfered with each other's targeting solutions. What should have been a simple planetary bombardment became a chaotic melee where Zephyrian ships found themselves unable to fire without hitting their own forces. Impossible, Zilf breathed as she watched her perfectly coordinated formation dissolve into confusion. No pilot could calculate those variables in real time. She was right. No normal pilot could. But Marcus wasn't calculating the variables. He was seeing them, perceiving the flow of battle like a musician hearing a symphony. Every decision the alien pilots made became visible to him before they completed the neural processes that would implement those decisions. When Zilf finally managed to acquire a clear targeting solution on the human craft, Marcus was already moving away from where her weapons would fire. When her wingman attempted to flank the human from below, the Starfire was sliding through a gap that wouldn't exist until the movement itself created it. All units, concentrate fire. Zilf commanded, abandoning tactical precision for raw firepower. The response was devastating and precise. Every energy cannon in her formation fired simultaneously at the position where the Starfire would have to be. The combined firepower was sufficient to destroy a small moon. The Starfire wasn't there. Marcus had seen the convergence pattern developing 4 seconds before the aliens had begun coordinating their attack. Instead of evading, he had accelerated directly toward the formation center, using the brief moment when their weapons were recharging to position himself where their own ships would shield him from follow-up attacks. But he wasn't just evading anymore. The Starfire's experimental weapons systems came online with an efficiency that surprised even Marcus. Unlike the aliens' energy cannons, human weapons technology had developed along different principles. Where Zephyrian technology relied on raw power, human engineering emphasized precision and efficiency. The Starfire's kinetic interceptors were designed to disable rather than destroy. Each projectile was guided by microthrusters and equipped with sensors that allowed it to target specific subsystems rather than attempting to overwhelm an enemy's defenses. Marcus fired 6 rounds in 3 seconds. Each shot struck a different Zephyrian craft in its primary engine coupling. The aliens' advanced shields, designed to deflect energy attacks, proved far less effective against solid projectiles that targeted structural weak points with surgical precision. 6 alien craft began tumbling out of control as their propulsion systems failed. None were destroyed, but all were rendered combat ineffective. Retreat! Zilf ordered, her tactical training finally overriding her disbelief. Reform at safe distance. But retreat required coordination, and Marcus had already identified the communication patterns that allowed the alien formation to operate as a unit. The Starfire's electronic warfare suite, enhanced by his integrated consciousness, began broadcasting targeted interference that disrupted alien communications without affecting human systems. Suddenly, isolated from each other, the remaining Zephyrian craft found themselves facing an opponent who could predict their individual responses while they struggled to coordinate any collective defense. The battle lasted 18 more minutes. When it ended, 12 Zephyrian dropships floated dead in Earth's upper atmosphere, their crews alive but their equipment systematically disabled. Marcus had not killed a single enemy. Instead, he had demonstrated something far more terrifying to a species that had conquered the galaxy through technological supremacy. He had made their technology irrelevant. Unknown human craft, came a transmission on multiple frequencies. This is Admiral Kethvox of the Dominion's Edge. You will surrender immediately or face the full firepower of our orbital weapons. Marcus finally opened a communication channel, his voice reaching not just the alien admiral but broadcasting on every frequency that Earth's remaining communication networks could access. Admiral Kethvox. I am Major Marcus Chen of Earth Defense Command. You have attacked my planet and killed my people. You have exactly one opportunity to withdraw your forces and depart this system immediately. In orbit above, Admiral Kethvox stared at his tactical displays with compound eyes that struggled to process what they were seeing. A single human craft was ascending toward his position, having somehow neutralized an entire attack formation without destroying a single vessel. His experience with conquered species suggested that such precision was impossible without intimate knowledge of Zephyrian technology. Human, Kethvox responded, his voice carrying the authority of 3 centuries of conquest. You face the Dominion's Edge. A battleship that has reduced star systems to ash. Your primitive craft cannot threaten this vessel. Admiral, Marcus's voice came back with a tone that somehow conveyed both respect and certainty. Your ship is indeed formidable. But you've made the same mistake that every opponent I've ever faced has made. Which is, you assume that superior technology guarantees victory. But technology is only as effective as the intelligence that guides it. And intelligence, Admiral, is something that cannot be manufactured or installed. It can only be enhanced. The Starfire continued its approach toward the massive alien vessel, its path steady and direct despite the dozens of weapon systems tracking its progress. To Admiral Kethvox, the human's confidence seemed like the desperate bravado of a species facing extinction. He was about to learn that desperation had nothing to do with it. Marcus Chen was ascending toward a confrontation that would determine not just the fate of Earth, but the future balance of power in an entire galaxy that had never faced a human being who represented the absolute pinnacle of what evolution, technology, and human determination could achieve when united in the defense of home. The real test was about to begin. Admiral Kethvox had commanded Star Destroyer-class vessels for over 2 centuries. The Dominion's Edge represented the pinnacle of Zephyrian military engineering, a kilometer-long instrument of conquest that had reduced hundreds of worlds to submission. Its shields could deflect the combined firepower of entire planetary defense fleets. Its weapons could crack continents. Its crew of 50,000 represented the elite of the galaxy's most successful military force. As he watched the single human craft approach his vessel with steady determination, Kethvox felt an emotion that his species had evolved to suppress. Doubt. Weapons status, he asked his tactical officer. All batteries charged and locked onto target, Admiral. The human's craft is within optimal firing range. Shall I destroy it? Kethvox's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. The logical response was obvious. Eliminate the threat with overwhelming force and proceed with planetary subjugation. But logic struggled against the evidence of his own sensors, which clearly indicated that the approaching pilot had somehow neutralized a full battle formation without destroying a single vessel. Open a channel, he decided. I want to understand what we're facing. The main display activated to show the interior of the human craft. Admiral Kethvox had encountered hundreds of species during his career, and he had learned to recognize the signs of warriors, politicians, and those who were dangerous beyond their apparent capabilities. The human who appeared on his screen defied all his categories. Marcus Chen sat in the Starfire's pilot seat with complete relaxation, his hands resting lightly on controls while his eyes moved in patterns that suggested he was processing far more information than any biological entity should be capable of handling. When he looked directly into the camera, Kethvox felt the unsettling sensation of being analyzed by an intelligence that operated on principles he didn't understand. Major Chen, the Admiral began, using the title he had learned from intelligence reports. I am Admiral Kethvox, commander of the Zephyrian 7th Fleet. You pilot your craft towards certain destruction. For the final time, I offer you the opportunity to surrender and spare your species further suffering. Marcus smiled, an expression that somehow managed to convey both genuine respect and absolute confidence. Admiral, I appreciate your concern for my safety. But, before this conversation continues, I should probably mention that you're about to lose primary power to your weapons grid. Even as Marcus spoke, warning alarms began sounding throughout the Dominion's Edge. Engineering stations across the massive vessel reported power fluctuations in systems that had operated flawlessly for decades. Most disturbing, the fluctuations seemed to be following patterns that suggested deliberate manipulation rather than random failure. Impossible, Kethvox stated, though his certainty was evaporating rapidly. Our shields prevent any form of electronic intrusion. Your shields are indeed impressive, Marcus acknowledged, his hands dancing across control surfaces with casual precision. But they're designed to deflect energy and matter. They were never intended to stop information. On the bridge of the Dominion's Edge, Chief Engineer Vexthal was discovering exactly what Marcus meant. The ship's quantum encrypted communication arrays were receiving data streams that somehow bypassed every security protocol while appearing to be routine status reports from the ship's own sensors. Admiral, Vexthal's voice carried barely controlled panic. The human is somehow accessing our internal networks through our own communication systems. He's not breaking into our computers. He's convincing them that he belongs there. Marcus continued his approach while his consciousness merged with the alien vessel's information systems with surgical precision. The Prometheus enhancements had given him capabilities that the original researchers never fully understood. He didn't just interface with technology. He could perceive the logical structures that governed complex systems and interact with them as naturally as a human might navigate a familiar building. Admiral, Marcus said, his voice now carrying slight echo that indicated he was simultaneously communicating through the Starfire's systems and the Dominion's Edge's own internal network. Your engineering staff are about to report that I've gained administrative access to your life support systems. Vexthal's terrified confirmation arrived on schedule. Admiral, he has root access to environmental controls, gravity generators, and artificial atmosphere processing. He could kill the entire crew in minutes. But Admiral Kethbox was an experienced warrior who had survived centuries of combat by recognizing patterns that others missed. The human had demonstrated the ability to neutralize enemies without killing them. More importantly, if he had wanted to destroy the Dominion's edge, he could have simply used their own weapons systems to do so instead of announcing his capabilities. "You're not here to destroy my ship," Kethbox realized. "You could have done that already. What do you want?" "To give you the same opportunity you offered me, Admiral. Surrender." The bridge of the Dominion's edge fell silent except for the continuing sound of alarms from systems that were somehow functioning perfectly while simultaneously being controlled by an external intelligence. "You want me to surrender the 7th Fleet to a single human?" "Not to me personally," Marcus clarified, still approaching the massive vessel with steady determination. "To the concept that superior technology doesn't automatically guarantee victory. To the realization that intelligence and adaptability can overcome raw power when properly applied." Marcus's craft was now close enough to the alien vessel that individual weapon emplacements were clearly visible. Each one tracked his approach with deadly precision, but none fired. The mathematical certainty that should have governed the encounter had become irrelevant when one participant could predict and counter the other's responses before those responses were fully formulated. "Demonstrate," Admiral Kethvox said simply. What happened next would later be studied in military academies across the galaxy as the definitive example of asymmetric warfare principles applied to space combat. Marcus executed a series of maneuvers around the Dominion's edge that should have been impossible. Where the massive vessel's weapons predicted he would be, the Starfire danced through spaces that existed for fractions of seconds before the alien ship's movement closed them again. But he wasn't just evading the weapons. He was using the ship's own defensive systems to demonstrate his complete understanding of their capabilities. Every time a weapon locked onto his position, Marcus triggered specific responses from other systems that created conflicting priorities for the ship's tactical computers. Point defense systems found themselves unable to fire because damage control protocols prevented them from endangering critical systems. Energy cannons couldn't acquire stable locks because navigation systems were receiving course corrections that Marcus was inserting into their command protocols. Within minutes, the galaxy's most advanced warship had become a maze of conflicting instructions where every system was functioning perfectly while being unable to work together effectively. "Stop," Admiral Kethvox commanded, his voice heavy with the realization of complete defeat. Marcus brought the Starfire to a halt relative to the alien vessel, positioning himself where every weapon could target him but where firing would require the deliberate override of safety systems that were now under his control. "Admiral," Marcus said gently, "I want you to understand something important. Everything I demonstrated to you, I learned from humanity's own history of warfare. We've been fighting asymmetric conflicts for our entire existence. David versus Goliath isn't just a story to us. It's a tactical manual." On the main display, Marcus stood and walked to what appeared to be the Starfire's primary control console. But, instead of manipulating local systems, his hands moved through holographic displays that clearly showed real-time data from throughout the Dominion's edge. "Your species achieved interstellar dominance through technological superiority and coordinated tactics. Those are formidable advantages. But they become weaknesses when facing an opponent who can turn your own coordination against you and make your technology work for their purposes instead of yours." Admiral Kethvox studied the human who had somehow rendered his entire fleet ineffective without firing a shot. The being's confidence wasn't the bravado of desperation. It was the quiet certainty of someone who understood principles of conflict that transcended specific technologies or tactics. "What terms do you offer?" the Admiral asked. "Complete withdrawal from this system. Immediate cessation of hostilities against human colonies. And a communication link to your superior command structure." "You want to negotiate with the Collective Council?" "Admiral, your invasion of Earth wasn't a random act of conquest. Intelligence suggests you're expanding into this region because you're fleeing something. I want to know what kind of threat requires the Zephyrian Collective to acquire new territory and resources this desperately." For the first time since the conversation began, Admiral Kethvox displayed visible surprise. Human intelligence capabilities were apparently more sophisticated than his briefings had indicated. "The Devourers," he said finally. "Ancient enemies who consume entire star systems. They've broken through our outer defenses and are advancing toward core collective territories. We need new resources and defensible positions to mount an effective resistance. Marcus absorbed this information with the same supernatural speed he applied to everything else. Then, we have a mutual interest in survival. But, Earth will not be your source of resources or cannon fodder. Then, what do you propose? An alliance. Human tactical innovation combined with Zephyrian technology and resources. Your species is excellent at building tools for conquest. Humanity excels at using whatever tools are available to achieve victory against impossible odds. Admiral Kethbox considered the proposal while studying tactical displays that showed his own weapon systems being operated with precision that exceeded his crew's capabilities. The human had demonstrated that traditional concepts of military superiority were irrelevant when facing an intelligence that could adapt faster than organizations could respond. And, if the Collective Council rejects your proposal? Marcus smiled again, but, this time the expression carried implications that made the Admiral's secondary hearts accelerate. Then, you'll discover whether humanity's reputation for being too stubborn to know when we're beaten is accurate. The communication channel expanded to include additional figures on both sides. On the human side, Secretary General Chen appeared along with military commanders from every major nation. On the Zephyrian side, sub-commanders and department heads reported from throughout the 7th Fleet. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus addressed the expanded audience, we're about to participate in the first interstellar diplomatic negotiation in human history. I suggest we make it memorable. What followed was a conversation that would reshape the balance of power in an entire galactic region. But, the immediate outcome was already determined by the demonstration of capabilities that had made traditional military hierarchy irrelevant. Admiral Kethbox looked at the human who had somehow transformed a certain conquest into an uncertain alliance, and realized that his species had encountered something unprecedented in 3 centuries of expansion. They had met a worthy opponent. And, for the first time in their history, that opponent was offering to fight beside them instead of against them. The decision would determine whether the galaxy gained its most formidable alliance, or whether humanity would demonstrate why their species had evolved the concept of mutually assured destruction. Either way, nothing would ever be the same. The quantum communication array aboard the Dominion's Edge hummed with activity as Admiral Kethbox established a direct link to the Zephyrian Collective Council. 300 light-years away, in the massive orbital complex that served as the Collective's primary command center, 12 of the galaxy's most powerful military leaders prepared to receive what should have been a routine conquest report. Council Prime Thex Moran's compound eyes focused on the transmission display with the practiced attention of someone who had overseen the subjugation of 43 star systems. The 7th Fleet's mission to acquire the Sol system was expected to take no more than 72 standard hours. Earth's primitive technology posed no theoretical threat to Zephyrian superiority. Admiral Kethbox, Thex Moran's voice carried across interstellar space with crystal clarity. Report conquest status. Council Prime, the Admiral's response carried undertones that immediately alerted the Council to unexpected developments. I am transmitting a complete tactical analysis, but I must first report that Operation Solar Acquisition has encountered unprecedented complications. The pause that followed lasted exactly 4 seconds, long enough for the galaxy's most experienced military strategists to process the implications of a report that should have been impossible. Explain unprecedented complications, Admiral. Instead of answering directly, Admiral Kethbox activated a secondary communication channel. Council Prime, I am transferring primary communication privileges to Major Marcus Chen of the Human Species Earth Defense Command. The silence from the council chamber was so complete that the quantum transmission protocols automatically increased gain to verify the connection remained active. Marcus appeared on the council's main display with the same relaxed confidence he had shown throughout his encounter with the 7th Fleet. Behind him, holographic displays showed real-time data from throughout the Dominion's Edge engineering reports, tactical analyses, and system diagnostics that should have been accessible only to senior Zephyrian command staff. Honored council members, Marcus began, his voice carrying the formal courtesy of someone who understood the significance of first contact protocols. I am Major Marcus Chen, currently representing Earth's interests in what I believe will become a historically significant negotiation. Council Prime Thex Moran's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of stress that her colleagues recognized but had rarely witnessed. Human, you address the supreme military authority of the Zephyrian Collective. Admiral Kethbox, explain how a primitive species has gained access to fleet communication protocols. Council Prime, Admiral Kethvox's voice carried the weight of 3 centuries of loyal service. Major Chen has demonstrated capabilities that require immediate strategic reassessment. He has gained administrative control of the Dominion's edge without weapons, destroyed an entire battle formation without casualties, and accessed our quantum encrypted networks using principles that our best engineers cannot identify. Marcus gestured to the displays around him, each showing different aspects of the massive alien vessel's operations. Council Prime, with respect, I haven't gained control of your ship. I've simply demonstrated that your security protocols are based on assumptions about intelligence distribution that don't account for enhanced human capabilities. Enhanced how? Genetic modification that amplifies human pattern recognition, tactical analysis, and technology integration beyond baseline biological limitations. The result is an intelligence that can adapt to new systems faster than those systems can implement countermeasures. Council member Vex Thoris, the collective's chief strategic analyst, leaned forward with obvious interest. You claim to have modified your own biology to achieve technological superiority? Not technological superiority, Marcus corrected gently. Tactical adaptability. Your technology is indeed superior to baseline human capabilities. But, technology is only effective when guided by intelligence that understands its optimal application. Enhanced human intelligence can identify and exploit optimization opportunities that escape conventional analysis. To demonstrate, Marcus caused the Dominion's edge's external lighting arrays to pulse in complex patterns that spelled out mathematical equations in 17 different languages, including 3 that the Council recognized as theoretical frameworks for unified field theory, concepts that Zephyrian science had been unable to complete. Impossible, whispered Council member Taith Varix. Those equations require computational resources equivalent to a planetary network. Only if approached through conventional processing methods, Marcus replied. Enhanced human consciousness doesn't process information sequentially. We recognize patterns across multiple data streams simultaneously. What requires massive computational power using traditional methods can be resolved through intuitive pattern recognition that operates faster than digital analysis. Council Prime Thex Moran was beginning to understand the magnitude of what she was facing. Human, are you claiming that biological enhancement can exceed artificial intelligence capabilities? I'm suggesting that the distinction between biological and artificial intelligence becomes irrelevant when consciousness integrates with technology at the quantum level. Your computers process data. Enhanced human consciousness recognizes the relationships between data points before the processing is complete. Marcus paused to allow the Council to absorb implications that challenged fundamental assumptions about intelligence hierarchies. But, Council Prime, I'm not here to debate theoretical frameworks. I'm here because Admiral Kethvox informed me that your expansion into human space is motivated by an external threat that requires immediate attention. The Council chamber fell silent as classified intelligence entered public discussion. Finally, Council Prime Thex Moran made a decision that would later be recognized as the moment when galactic politics shifted toward entirely new configurations. Major Chen, you're referring to the Devourer incursion? Yes. Ancient autonomous systems that consume stellar material and convert it into self-replicating units. Based on Admiral Kethvox's intelligence briefing, they breached your outer defensive perimeter and are advancing toward core collective territories at approximately 40% of lightspeed. How did you analyze classified tactical data in the 17 minutes since Admiral Kethvox mentioned the threat? Marcus smiled with genuine warmth. Council Prime, enhanced human intelligence doesn't just recognize patterns in data. We recognize patterns in the absence of data. Admiral Kethvox's stress responses, the urgency behind your expansion timeline, the resources you're allocating to conquering primitive worlds instead of defending core territories, everything indicates a species facing an existential threat with insufficient time and resources for conventional responses. Council member Vex Thoris activated her own analysis systems to verify Marcus's deductions. The correlation between available evidence and his conclusions exceeded 96% accuracy, a level that their best strategic computers achieved only after extensive data collection. Assuming your analysis is correct, Council Prime Thex Moran said carefully, what do you propose? An alliance. Zephyrian technology and manufacturing capability combined with human tactical innovation and adaptability. Your species excels at creating powerful tools. Humanity specializes in using available tools to achieve victories that shouldn't be mathematically possible. Provide evidence of human military effectiveness. Marcus activated a series of historical databases that he had somehow accessed from Earth's networks while maintaining his connection to the Zephyrian systems. The Council found themselves viewing compressed analyses of human military history, thousands of conflicts where technologically inferior forces had achieved victory through tactical innovation, psychological warfare, and the application of principles that challenged conventional strategic doctrine. Thermopylae, Agincourt, Stalingrad, Tet Offensive. In each case, forces facing overwhelming disadvantages achieved strategic victories through adaptive tactics that turned enemy advantages into vulnerabilities. Council member Taith Varick studied the tactical summaries with growing amazement. Your species has been conducting asymmetric warfare for its entire technological development period? We've been refining it. Every conflict teaches us new methods for overcoming superior opposition. Enhanced humans represent the culmination of millions of years of evolutionary pressure that rewarded tactical innovation over raw strength. And, you believe these principles can be applied to the Devourer threat? Marcus caused the communication display to shift to strategic analyses that he was generating in real time. The presentation showed potential engagement scenarios between Devourer forces and combined human-Zephyrian capabilities. Where traditional modeling predicted inevitable collective defeat, the inclusion of human tactical doctrine suggested engagement outcomes that were significantly more favorable. Devourers operate according to optimized consumption algorithms. They're essentially perfect predators, which means they've evolved to counter conventional defensive strategies. But they've never encountered a species that specializes in unconventional warfare. Council Prime Thex Moran exchanged rapid communications with her colleagues through private channels before responding. Major Chen, the Collective Council requires guarantees of human commitment and evidence of practical cooperation capabilities. Understood. I propose a joint operation to test integration protocols and demonstrate combined effectiveness. Admiral Kefvox's fleet can provide platforms and firepower while human tactical specialists provide strategic coordination and adaptive response capabilities. What target do you suggest? Marcus activated displays showing the current positions of all collective forces engaged with Devourer incursions. His analysis highlighted a specific engagement zone where traditional Zephyrian tactics had resulted in stalemate conditions. Sector 77 Alpha. Your 4th Fleet has been fighting a defensive action against a Devourer scouting force for 6 standard days. Traditional engagement doctrine suggests inevitable retreat within 48 hours. And human tactical doctrine suggests that scouting forces are gathering intelligence for larger invasions. Instead of defending against them, we eliminate them completely and use their own reconnaissance data to identify their main staging areas. Council member Vexthoris activated her tactical analysis systems. Major Chen, the forces in Sector 77 Alpha include 12 Devourer capital ships and approximately 3,000 autonomous attack units. The mathematical probability of eliminating rather than merely repelling such forces is statistically negligible. Marcus's smile broadened. Council member Vexthoris, would you like to know what the mathematical probability of a single enhanced human disabling an entire Zephyrian battle formation was before this morning? The council chamber fell silent as the implications settled across galactic strategic planning. Proposal accepted, Council Prime Thex Moran announced. Admiral Kefvox, you will integrate human tactical personnel into 7th Fleet operations and proceed immediately to Sector 77 Alpha. Major Chen, you will coordinate with our military commanders and demonstrate human strategic capabilities under combat conditions. Understood, Council Prime. But I have one additional requirement. Which is, I want every engagement broadcast to all collective forces and recorded for strategic analysis. When we succeed, I want your entire military establishment to understand exactly how human tactical principles can be integrated with Zephyrian capabilities. And if you fail? Marcus stood and walked to the Starfire's control systems, his movements displaying the casual confidence that had characterized his entire interaction with the galaxy's most powerful military force. Council Prime, failure isn't a concept that enhanced humans recognize. We understand temporary setbacks, tactical adjustments, and strategic redirection. But ultimate failure requires accepting limitations that we've specifically evolved to transcend. The communication channel closed, leaving the Council to contemplate an alliance that challenged every assumption about interstellar power structures. Admiral Kethvox looked at the human who had somehow converted an invasion into an alliance and realized that he was about to participate in the most significant military cooperation in galactic history. The real test was about to begin. And, for the first time in centuries, the Zephyrian collective would discover what happened when human determination met challenges that conventional warfare couldn't overcome. The Devourers were about to learn why humanity had survived every extinction-level threat their home planet had ever produced. The hyperspace translation to Sector 77 Alpha took 18 hours, during which Marcus used his integrated consciousness to analyze every piece of available data about Devourer capabilities, tactical patterns, and technological specifications. By the time the combined fleet dropped back into normal space, he had developed a strategic framework that challenged everything the galaxy understood about large-scale warfare. Admiral Kethvox stood on the bridge of the Dominion's edge, watching his tactical displays populate with contact signatures that represented the largest concentration of hostile forces he had encountered in 3 centuries of military service. 12 Devourer capital ships hung in perfect geometric formation around a dying star, their dark hulls absorbing energy from the stellar core while thousands of smaller autonomous units swarmed between them like metallic insects. Fleet Admiral Seth Coral requests immediate communication, reported his communications officer. The main display activated to show the commander of the 4th Fleet, a veteran warrior whose compound eyes reflected the exhaustion of 6 days of continuous combat. Behind her, the bridge of her flagship showed obvious battle damage, and her staff moved with the careful economy of beings operating on minimal resources. Admiral Kethvox, Zeth Coral's voice carried the weight of accumulated frustration. Your arrival is timely. We've lost 7 ships and our ammunition reserves are depleted by 30%. The Devourers have established defensive positions that make direct assault impossible. Marcus stepped into the communication field, his presence immediately drawing the attention of every Zephyrian officer visible on the channel. Word of the human who had somehow neutralized the 7th Fleet had spread throughout collective command structures with the speed of digitally transmitted legend. Fleet Admiral Seth Coral, Marcus said formally, I'm Major Marcus Chen, representing human tactical integration with collective forces. I'd like permission to analyze your engagement data and propose alternative strategic approaches. Zeth Coral's mandibles clicked with skepticism. Major Chen, we've been fighting Devourers for longer than your species has possessed spaceflight capability. What analysis could you provide that our strategic computers haven't already calculated? Marcus gestured to his displays, which immediately began showing real-time data streams from throughout both fleets. Fleet Admiral, your computers excel at analyzing known variables and calculating optimal responses to predicted scenarios. Human tactical analysis specializes in identifying variables that conventional analysis doesn't recognize and exploiting opportunities that appear impossible until someone demonstrates their existence. To illustrate his point, Marcus highlighted specific aspects of the Devourer formation that had escaped collective attention. Your reports indicate that Devourer forces maintain perfect coordination through quantum-entangled communication networks. Standard doctrine suggests disrupting these networks to create tactical confusion. Exactly what we've been attempting for 6 days, Zeth Coral confirmed. Their communication redundancies make systematic disruption impossible. Which is why we're not going to disrupt their communications. We're going to use them. The silence that followed lasted long enough for every Zephyrian officer in both fleets to process the implications of a strategy that challenged fundamental principles of electronic warfare. Use enemy communications? Admiral Kethvox asked carefully. Devourers operate according to optimized algorithms that prioritize efficiency above all other considerations. Their perfect coordination is actually a vulnerability because it requires absolute trust in data integrity. If we can introduce false information into their networks, we can cause them to optimize themselves into tactically impossible positions. Marcus activated a simulation that showed Devourer forces receiving carefully crafted sensor data that would convince their tactical algorithms to reorganize their formation in ways that appeared more efficient while actually creating exploitable weaknesses. Major Chen, Fleet Admiral Zeth Coral said slowly, are you suggesting that we can hack systems that have resisted our best electronic warfare specialists for 6 days? Not hack. Seduce. We're going to convince their optimization protocols that they've identified superior tactical configurations. Instead of breaking into their systems, we'll make those systems want to implement our suggestions. The technical discussion that followed involved concepts that pushed the boundaries of both human and Zephyrian understanding. Marcus demonstrated methods for creating false sensor readings that would trigger devourer optimization responses while appearing to originate from their own reconnaissance data. The strategy required coordination between both fleets and precise timing that would allow no margin for error. Implementation timeline? Admiral Kethfox asked. 17 minutes for initial system integration, 12 minutes for false data generation, and approximately 4 minutes for enemy repositioning. Total engagement time will be less than 35 minutes from initiation to completion. Fleet Admiral Zethkorel studied tactical projections that showed impossible victory conditions achieved through methods that her strategic computers classified as theoretically unsound. Major Chen, if your strategy fails, we'll lose both fleets and the Devourers will advance to core collective territories unopposed. Fleet Admiral, enhanced human consciousness doesn't calculate probability of success. We recognize patterns that guarantee success when properly implemented. The only variables are execution timing and force coordination. Marcus walked to the primary tactical console and began implementing integration protocols that connected human strategic analysis with Zephyrian fleet command systems. For the first time in galactic military history, two entirely different approaches to warfare began operating as a unified system. All ships report ready status, Admiral Kethfox announced. Fleet Admiral Zethkorel, begin withdrawal protocols but maintain communication with Devourer reconnaissance units. I want them to believe you're retreating due to tactical weakness rather than strategic repositioning. The Fourth Fleet began moving away from the Devourer formation with the careful precision of forces acknowledging superior opposition. Their movements triggered exactly the response Marcus had predicted. Devourer reconnaissance units increased their scanning activity to gather intelligence about collective retreat patterns. Phase 1 complete. Initiating false data integration. Marcus's consciousness merged with the combined fleet communication arrays, his enhanced pattern recognition allowing him to identify the specific data protocols that Devourer systems would interpret as legitimate reconnaissance intelligence. Instead of attempting to penetrate their networks, he began broadcasting carefully crafted sensor readings that would appear to originate from their own reconnaissance units. The false data painted a picture of collective forces that were more weakened and disorganized than actual conditions indicated. More importantly, it suggested tactical opportunities that would require Devourer forces to reorganize their formation to achieve maximum efficiency. Enemy formation beginning to shift, reported Admiral Kethfox's tactical officer. They're repositioning to exploit perceived weaknesses in our retreat pattern. On the main displays, 12 massive Devourer capital ships began moving with mechanical precision toward positions that their algorithms calculated as optimal for pursuit and destruction of fleeing enemies. Thousands of autonomous attack units swarmed ahead of them, eager to engage what appeared to be vulnerable targets. Phase 2 complete. Beginning tactical revelation. What happened next would be studied in military academies throughout the galaxy for centuries to come. As Devourer forces moved to exploit false opportunities, Marcus triggered a series of coordination protocols that revealed the true positions and capabilities of both collective fleets. Suddenly, what appeared to be two weakened fleets in retreat became a perfectly coordinated trap that had been designed specifically to counter Devourer optimization algorithms. The enemy found themselves committed to attack patterns that placed them in positions where their own tactical superiority became irrelevant. All ships implement tactical pattern Omega, Marcus commanded across both fleets simultaneously. The response was immediate and devastating. Zephyrian vessels that had been retreating in apparent disorder suddenly coordinated in attack patterns that targeted specific points where Devourer formation integrity was compromised. Human tactical principles guided collective firepower with precision that maximized damage while minimizing exposure to counterattack. But the most remarkable aspect of the engagement was what didn't happen. Instead of attempting to destroy Devourer forces through superior firepower, the combined strategy focused on disrupting their coordination algorithms and forcing them into situations where their own optimization protocols prevented effective response. Impossible, Fleet Admiral Zethkorel breathed as she watched Devourer capital ships beginning to interfere with each other's targeting solutions because their formation algorithms had prioritized efficiency over tactical flexibility. Enemy communications networks compromised, Admiral Kethfox reported. They're attempting to reorganize, but their optimization protocols are creating conflicting priorities. Marcus observed the battle development with the calm satisfaction of someone watching a complex plan unfold exactly as predicted. Fleet Admiral Zethkorel, your forces can now advance to close engagement range. Enemy coordination is sufficiently disrupted to allow conventional tactical superiority to determine the outcome. The final phase of the battle lasted 8 minutes. Devourer forces that had maintained perfect coordination for 6 days found themselves unable to implement cohesive defensive strategies, while collective forces exploited tactical opportunities with unprecedented precision. When the last enemy signature disappeared from tactical displays, both fleets found themselves in complete control of a star system that had been considered lost. Tactical analysis complete, Marcus announced. Enemy forces eliminated with minimal friendly casualties. All Devourer technology and data cores secured for intelligence analysis. The communication channels filled with reports from throughout both fleets as commanders attempted to process what they had witnessed. The most advanced enemy they had ever encountered had been defeated not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through tactical innovation that turned their own advantages against them. Major Chen, Fleet Admiral Zeth Coral said slowly, "You've just demonstrated strategic capabilities that exceed our best projections for human collective cooperation." Fleet Admiral, this was a demonstration of integration possibilities. Enhanced human tactical analysis combined with Zephyrian technological capabilities creates opportunities that neither could achieve independently. Council Prime Fex Moran's image appeared on fleet communication channels, her compound eyes reflecting a mixture of amazement and calculation. Major Chen, the Collective Council has monitored your engagement and analyzed your strategic methodologies. We are prepared to formalize alliance protocols immediately. Council Prime, humanity accepts alliance with the Zephyrian Collective under terms of mutual cooperation and strategic integration. But, I have one additional demonstration that I believe will interest you. Marcus activated displays showing strategic analyses that extended far beyond the immediate tactical situation. His enhanced consciousness had been processing intelligence about Devourer capabilities, distribution patterns, and underlying technological principles throughout the entire engagement. Based on enemy data cores recovered during this operation, I've identified the central coordination network that governs all Devourer activities throughout this galactic region. Their apparent autonomy is actually managed by a central intelligence that optimizes resource allocation across multiple star systems simultaneously. You're suggesting a single point of failure for the entire Devourer threat? I'm suggesting a single target whose elimination would cause systematic collapse of enemy coordination throughout 47 star systems. The result would be isolated Devourer units operating with individual tactical algorithms instead of coordinated strategic planning. The implications settled across both fleets as officers realized they were looking at strategic intelligence that could determine the outcome of a galactic-scale conflict. Major Chen, Council Prime Fex Moran said carefully, "Are you prepared to lead a combined human collective operation against this central target?" Marcus smiled with the confidence that had characterized every aspect of his interaction with galactic military forces. Council Prime, enhanced humans don't just recognize patterns in existing data. We recognize the patterns that determine how those patterns will develop. The Devourer's central intelligence operates according to optimization algorithms that assume rational opposition. It has never encountered an intelligence that specializes in irrationally effective tactical innovation. And, humanity is prepared to share this capability permanently? Humanity is prepared to forge an alliance that ensures both our species survive and prosper. The galaxy is large enough for cooperation instead of conquest, but only if we work together to eliminate threats that endanger everyone. The communication channel expanded to include diplomatic representatives from Earth and senior collective council members. What followed was the negotiation of the first interstellar alliance in human history, forged in the aftermath of a victory that had demonstrated the potential of cooperation between species with fundamentally different approaches to warfare and technology. Admiral Kethvox looked at the human who had somehow converted an invasion into an alliance and a tactical disaster into unprecedented victory. The galaxy had just gained its most formidable military partnership, and the balance of power had shifted in ways that would echo across centuries of future development. Marcus Chen had awakened not just as a human super-warrior, but as the architect of a new era where human determination and alien technology would combine to face challenges that neither could overcome alone. The Devourers were about to discover why underestimating humanity's capacity for impossible victories was the last mistake any enemy ever made. And the galaxy was about to learn that when humans say impossible, they're usually just describing their next mission objective.